Hey guys, my name's Phil. It's Tuesday, it's vaguely noonish. This week, I thought I would talk a little bit about the process that I go through when I'm reheading a drum. I shot about 45 minutes worth of stuff, which I will then have to cut down to try and make some sense of it, right? Let's see how we go. Come here, you. Obligatory kitten in the shot, because he won't ever leave me alone. Which I guess is kind of his thing, being a kitten and all. But okay, for this process, you are going to want a super fancy container to put all your parts in and keep things sorted and organized. The container I use personally, I spent a whopping 243 pennies on. I got it from the dollar store. It was very fantastic. Next, you will need a drum key. You might want to cheat a little bit and use an electric one, but very important, the electric one is only to be used for the removal, not for the installation of parts. I like this one. When you go to take off your lugs, you will need a screwdriver. That's a very cheap one. Same rule with the drill. If you want to use an electric one, only for removal, not for installation. When you put it back together, you will need more than likely some new strapping of some kind. 5/8 inch cross grain ribbon works very well in super fancy Schinbein Drum Co orange. For the lugs, you will need some kind of goop. It's always good. And last but not least, super romantic, you'll need a candle. Let's get into it. The drum I'll be using for this little demonstration is one of the first ones I ever put together. Blam. It's called, I call it the Big Brother, because it was designed by my big brother. And then, you know, I just kept it. It's been an embarrassing amount of time since I did any work on this drum whatsoever. You can see it's all mangled and stuff on the hoops. This head is dead. It needs replacing. The main reason that this drum needs fixing is it's very, you can see like the head is stretched out to the point where the hoop is practically flush with the bearing edge, which means this head itself is just played out. It's just stretched beyond its usable capacity, so to speak. Yeah, which is usually when your drum becomes either unresponsive or the tuning goes out very quickly and easily. On the resonant side anyway. The wires are still fine, so I'll use those. I'll reuse these. Okay, so first thing I do when I take off the head is actually go through and look at the hoop. Make sure the hoop's fine, clean it up, you know, get all the sawdust and crap out of in here. Like I said, this is one of the first drums I ever made. I think this was maybe number 3 or 4, something like that. You know, so we'll see all kinds of weird mistakes and stuff later on. But for now, let's just keep on trucking here. The bearing edges, I'm actually not particularly a fan of them. They're very sharp. The actual edge itself is fine. Yeah, I'm looking for like little nicks and dings or anything in the bearing edge itself, but there aren't any. I didn't think there would be because I'm fairly meticulous with stuff like that. Okay, so let's go to the other side. Okay, once again, checking the hoop, making sure it's fine, and for the most part it is. They're fine. It's all good. Drum key for the wires. Okay, so like I said, these wires are fine still. You can see, and you just lay them down with no pressure on them. There's no warpage this way. There's nothing's played out, nothing's flapping around and being weird. So yeah, this head has just hardly any play left in it at all. It's just tapped out. That was an awful pun, sorry about that. Yeah. So there's a bit of damage on the snare beds from those cords being super tight, over tensioned and whatnot. Big brother. Oops, need refinishing. This is the part where a right angle drill comes in very handy. Okay, so everything seems to be fine. There's some aesthetic things that obviously need to be fixed and whatnot, but it's all good. I'm just gonna put it back together. Eventually I will recut these edges. Yeah, so I'll put all the hardware back on and then we'll get back to work. Okay, so the hardware's on. I posted a picture a couple days ago about when I started this, and I put a thing about guessing what the candle would be for, right? And a lot of people were guessing that it was to do the bearing edges. I generally only do that if the drum has a lot of head to shell contact. With this one, the bearing edge is just so sharp that there's no real need, and it's actually sealed timber, so there's no point in waxing that at all. But if it was like a baseball bat edge or like a really pronounced rounded edge and it was still raw, then I would put some wax on it, but not from some random scented candle from I don't know where. I've got a special paste wax that I like to use for that. So, you guys were wrong. Wahaha! Alrighty. So it turns out I did need to go reshape the snare beds a little bit. They weren't nearly deep enough. That also means that now I can do a bit of paste wax work on a bit of the bearing edges. So I literally just use a J-cloth, get a nice layer of wax on there, and then just apply liberally. You know, not a lot, but you know, enough. Love the smell of finishing wax. So good. Old t-shirts work the best for this. Just like polishing shoes. You don't want it to actually even feel waxy at all. You just don't want bare timber, right? Bare timber is bad timber. On the batter side, this time around, I'm going to give one of these Caftones a go. Generally, I tend to line up the badge, or the logo on the head with the badge. I just like the symmetry and the OCD-ness of it. Now, one of the things that you should do if you use wooden hoops like this, I'll tend to rotate it around a little bit and kind of move things around, you know. Ta-da! I lube up my tension rods slightly. I just use a bit of goop. It's literally goop. It's just a lube. You can get right into what kind of fancy lubricants you want to use, but essentially the only point for putting lube on your tension rods is just the fact that metal on metal is bad, right? So you want just a little bit of help, you know. And when I do this part, I put them in just the tiniest little bit, and I tend to go all the way around. There's no tension on here whatsoever yet. You know, it's literally just the bottom two little bits. Okay, so now they're all in there just a little tiny bit. Now you want to kind of alternate Get them down just so there's a little bit of, the tiniest little bit of tension. Okay, so these are now all finger tight. Now I tend to go back around and tighten and push down a little bit, tighten out that little bit more. If they'll go, they won't always. And now, because this rotates, I tend to think I will do kind of the two that are opposite the straight line, the two tangential, I guess. I'll give them about a half a turn each. And then I will rotate these two kind of 2 spots over. Give them a half a turn. And it's skip one, then that one. And it's just, you can feel the tension, right? Before I get to the pressing and whatnot part, I will let it sit for a minute and do the resonant side head, right? I just find it kind of gets shocked and then it chills out a little bit. And then the time that it takes to put this head on is usually enough time to kind of get this side ready for some pushing. Now, the rotation of the resonant side hoop obviously doesn't work because the snare gates are only in one spot, you know. But the same thing, the logo, I still line it up with the badge too. I just find it easier that way. Oh yeah, I do I keep the lube in a little tin, and when I put it on I just literally put the tiniest little bit that I can possibly get on there, right? You don't want to be over lubing. That just makes things uncomfortable and awkward for everybody. So yeah, opposites are going just finger tight as you make your way around. Okay, so like I mentioned on the other side, push down a little bit, right? Either side of where the tension rod is, push down a little bit and turn. That gets it, you know, properly finger tight. And by finger tight, I mean literally as tight as you can get it by your fingers, if that's not particularly self-explanatory. Now, I tend to go, my right hand tends to be a little bit stronger than my left, so I tend to go twice around so I can get both sides with the stronger hand. Which seems counterproductive, but it is actually a little bit faster. So, now, same as before. Half turn, rotate. Now, the thing with doing a half turn at a time and going this one, rotate, this one, rotate, and you watch where the logo is, and by the time it gets all the way around, every lug has gone up one full turn, right? So it's half turn here, and then half turn, 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 etc., etc., etc. All the way around. We've gone up a full turn. Still a bit on the looser side. So we'll go back around, but this time it will go until the logo is here. Now Now generally, you want the resonant head to be fairly tight, comparatively. I like a resonant head to be a bit tighter, but generally the two either side of the throw, I'll leave a little bit looser, right? So an extra bit of a turn for these three, right? And these four will stay a little bit looser. It'll leave a bit more pronounced of a trough. A bit more pronounced trough? I don't know. You know what I mean. So we got this candle, right? Oh, some of you might have been wondering what the hell it's actually for. If you were following my Instagram thing. Yeah. So it is for the snare cord. When you cut it from the roll, you end up with just like really kind of mangled, weird ends. So we just pass it through the fire a little bit, twist it around on your fingertip. And being a nylon cord, it'll melt a bit at the end. And yeah, so that's what the candle was for. So more often than not, I tend to use the 5/8 cross grain ribbon rather than cord. But for some reason with this snare drum I've always used cord, so I figured I might as well just keep that going. Drum keys and knives and weapons and stuff everywhere. Yeah, so I'm gonna throw the old snare back together. So when you put the snare wires back on, I find it's pretty helpful to do the butt side first. So, loosen that off, loosen that off. Now, when you're putting it across, you want it to be kind of sitting nice and comfortably, roughly where it's going to be. Maybe a little bit more to the butt side than the snare side, because it'll kind of pull itself taut, as they say. This might actually still need adjusting and whatnot, but for now, we can call this close enough. I generally, when I'm putting this on, I'll try and set this roughly in the middle with the snare engaged, just so that I have a bit of a better understanding of where it's going to go, if that makes any sense. This is actually a terrible design. This does my head in right here. The two tension bolts are sticking straight up into the bottom of they're just, it's just a terrible design. Now there's two schools of thought, so to speak, on whether you should go kind of through from the back, right? Or through from the front and then around the back. I find personally, like, it actually makes no difference on a throw like this, because it's not designed to have any difference. So for a snare throw like this, it's just an aesthetic thing, which you like, whatever you like the look of better. You know, whatever you find to be prettiest. Because, you know, sometimes prettiness counts. Man. But yeah, or some schools of thought say it's best to go this way because it's easiest, right? It's much easier to pull this taut and tidy and keep these lined up and tight and whatnot, while you're then tightening these up. Or trying to figure out how to tighten these up with no drum keys actually fitting in there ever. Just so dumb. Am I being harsh again? I am being harsh again, aren't I? I had... Ow! Oh! Should have turned the candle off. In case you missed it, that was me burning my finger. Or my arm. In case you couldn't tell. You want to have it set up so that your snares are running straight, obviously. You don't want them to be so tight, but you want them to be just kind of in there, right? Yeah. The closer to center they are, the better. You want to make sure that the end plates are sitting square, right? Now that everything's on, a good old classic trick. Disengage the snare wires, put a drumstick across it, right? Or two. Just kind of get it out of the way so that now when you're doing your fine tuning, you can just do that without this stuff getting in the way. And you can actually get under here to add a bit of a push, bit of a stretch here and there, you know. I just disengaged the snares because it's easier to hear what's going on. I said I was going to let it kind of chill out a bit before tightening it, bringing it up to proper tension, pushing it and tightening it and pushing it and tensioning it and all that. So that's kind of, now we come back to this side, everything goes up, another, I don't know, what is that, a third? And you hear that cracking? That's actually a good thing. That's the, essentially the head adhering to the shape of the bearing edge, right? Which is why buying pre-seated heads, like used heads, is crap. Unless you find a drum that has the exact same bearing edge contour as yours, right? It's kind of garbage. Okay, so this started out just changing the heads, but it ended up being so much more than that. I ended up taking it all apart and putting everything back together. Yeah, ended up recutting the snare beds altogether. Because, you know, that's obviously necessary. And now... it's not particularly tuned very well. I tend to tune by feel, feeling the amount of tension on each individual tension rod as I go along. Hang on. It's a little bit better. So yeah, now I can go and do the other thing. This the snare wires, now that I recut the beds, are so much better. Alright, so yeah, that's how I change my heads. That's what I look at. The main points are when you take the heads off, make sure you take a look at your bearing edges, make sure they're okay. And then when you do put the head on, make sure it's seated properly, make sure the wires are on there evenly and parallel and not twisted or torqued out or anything. And you'll be good to go. So like always, if you like what I'm doing, share and like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell if you want to get a random notification every single week. Unless, you know, I'm sick and miss one, which is what happened at one point. I missed one of these. But anyway, tell everybody you know, tell your friends, tell your periodontist, tell your accountant, tell your everybody. You never know who's a drummer. Heck, tell your bass player. They might get some insights into the mind of a drummer. Yeah, I'll see you guys next week.